Yes, and we're live, Facebook Live in our group. As announced this week, we would do a Facebook Live in the Create a Life You Love for Frustrated Professionals. So if you see this video somewhere else, this was exclusively for our group members in our Facebook group, but you might catch this video somewhere else. So welcome to the group, welcome to the live. I'll put this one to the side because I've got some of my notes here in front of me. And yeah, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about high vibes. As you've seen in the announcements for the Facebook Live, we're going to talk about energy today. And it's one of my favorite topics, but it's also one of the topics that is quite hard to explain and quite hard to understand. And why is it so important? So, therefore, we're talking about high vibes or high energy today. Now, let's first talk a little bit about what does that mean. Actually, you could look at this quite simply, and that is as follows. So you could say, like, if you feel good, if you feel positive, if you feel optimistic, then you're in high vibes, you're in high frequency, you have high energy. If you feel bad, if you feel down, if you feel sad, if you feel distressed, you're in very low energy or very negative energy. Now, why is that important? We'll come to that later. First, I want to talk about, there was a little bit of a teaser in the introduction to this, and that is that I would talk about the Hawkins Map of Consciousness or Frequency Scale. So, Hawkins is a psychiatrist, physiologist, scientist, and he wrote a book called Power versus Force, and he actually spent a lot of his life, he's still alive, you can look him up, David Hawkins. In his research, he developed a map of consciousness, as he calls it. And the book is called Power versus Force. You can read it. It's like this big. And it's also the basis for what we teach in Peter Sage's Elite Mentorship Forum. So it's one of the basic understandings of how life works. Now, Hawkins identifies many levels. I think if I counted here, probably about 20 levels of consciousness. And there is a clear divider, and I'll mention some of the lower levels of consciousness that he names, and maybe you can resonate with that or you can relate to that. So some of the levels that he's calling in his book in lower levels of consciousness, for instance, are things like shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear. These are all very low emotions, right? And they calibrate very low on Hawkins' Map of Consciousness. I'll see if there's an internet picture for it that I can give to you. Things like desire, anger, and pride. So these energies, or these frequencies, as Hawkins calls it, are weak, right? And if you live in these frequencies or you live in these emotions, you really go through life with force, right? You have to force yourself through life, and you have to force things to happen in your life, and it's exhausting. So these levels are really, they lack integrity, they don't really support life, and Hawkins really calls them destructive. Now, the level to go up to the higher levels of consciousness is something he calls courage. So courage takes you out of lower levels of consciousness, lower frequencies, and brings you to the higher levels. And the higher levels that he mentions are courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, and then we go to the really higher levels, which are love or unconditional love, peace, and then his highest level of consciousness he calls enlightenment. Now, these terms are, just terms, and you can think about it what you want, but it gives you a really good idea about where you calibrate, right? And Hawkins actually has a method to calibrate people with that. So he could actually measure you and see what level you are calibrating on these energy levels or these levels of consciousness. Now, one important thing to notice is these higher levels, so the ones that I mentioned, courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, right? Reason, love, these are strong emotions, right? These are positive emotions and energy levels. And this is where creativity starts to happen. This is where you can, play with life and build something and create something again. In the lower levels of consciousness, it's very destructive. It's very hard to create something in your life if you're, for instance, in a state of fear, right? Very difficult. Now, these are Hawkins levels of consciousness, but Peter Sage, as you know, our mentor, our trainer, he identifies a bit more simpler form of these levels of consciousness. And I just quickly want to run through them to give you an idea about what they are about. So Peter calls the lowest levels of consciousness to me. And consciousness levels of to me's is victim mode. The reason why he calls it to me is because in that level you think that everything happens to you, right? You are helpless, you are a victim, you are blaming and shaming others, you are in apathy about life, you don't think you have an influence, and basically you allow things to happen to you. It's the lowest levels of consciousness. Then the next step up, which is much better, Peter calls by me. And the reason he calls it by me is because in by me, if something needs to happen in the world, it will happen by me. It's me doing it. It's a typical hustle mentality. Work hard, do what you want, hustle, hustle, hustle. That's typically by me levels of consciousness. It's much better than to me. You're out of victim mode. You're working hard in life to get through things. You are making progress. You're doing things, but still, it's tiring and it's still force, right? It's still working really hard to get through life. Now, then Peter talks about a level of consciousness called through me. And through me is really whereby life happens through you. You could say, if you're religious, the hand of God is working through you. The universe is working through you. You are in the flow of life. You are not fighting the flow of life, but you allow life to work through you. And one of the ways to maybe look at that is if you are calm during the day and you start to see coincidences happening, you start to attract coincidences into your life, into what you are doing. Things are happening for no reason that are helping you on your path of where you want to go. People show up in your life that help you with where you want to go. That's a typical level of through me. That's typically where you don't fight life anymore, but circumstances and events happen through you because of who you are and because of the energy that you radiate out. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. The fourth level of consciousness that Peter calls in his work is called as me. And that is basically similar to Hawkins' enlightenment, peace, unconditional love. As me is where basically it's a level of oneness whereby the separation between you, the universe, and other people disappears. Everything is one. We are all one. We are all energy. We are all connected. And that is the highest levels of consciousness, right? Whereby we realize, look, this whole game in this world that we're playing, it's all energy and we are all one. There is no difference between me or you or anyone else around you. He calls that as me, the highest levels of consciousness. So, why is it so important? Because as you can maybe feel when I describe these levels of consciousness, you will know the kind of energy that is attached to that, right? And the higher up you go, the lighter you live, the higher you vibrate, the more you are vibing, right? The more you are in high vibes. So therefore, it would be useful to learn how you go from, let's say, the lower levels of consciousness to the higher levels of consciousness, because obviously it's a more comfortable and more nice, and it's a nicer place to live and to be. So how do you do that? Let's talk about that. So, how do you get to that levels of consciousness, right? We'll talk about that later, how you can raise your levels. The first thing I was missing out is what I want to explain with this, and that is a more elaborate form of the law of attraction. Because these energies are not for nothing, right? What we teach people is that outer world follows inner world, which means that what we are on the inside, and not so much the person we are, but the energy we carry on the inside is actually what is attracting our circumstances on the outside, in the outer world. And therefore it's really important to raise our levels of energy, because if we radiate fear or if we radiate shame or guilt, guess what we are attracting in our life, right? We're attracting more things that will bring us shame, guilt, fear, and these negative emotions. You could see it as a magnet, right? If we consider that all particles and all matter in the world, if you go deep enough, if you look close enough, it's actually energy. It's protons, it's more energy than matter. Protons and electrons running around each other. And everything, even the physical matter, is energy in the end. So therefore, if you would say that we are like a radio broadcast station, right? We would influence how that outside world acts towards us by the energy that we carry. So if we power ourselves up and send a strong, clear, positive signal, empowering signal to the universe, the physical matter around us, the world around us, which is also energy, will have to respond to that. And therefore, what is one of our tasks in our life is to raise ourselves to these higher levels of energy so that the world around us conspires with us to also vibrate at that same level of energy. Imagine if you carry the energy of love for most of the day, there is no possibility for the outer world not to respond to that, right? There is no other way than love coming back to you because you are sending a clear signal to the universe about what you want. So that's really why outer world follows inner world. And I know this is a very brief and very short and very, compact way of talking about this. I understand. And there's a lot more depth to it. And I have to admit, I am not the super expert at all of these topics. I've been learning a lot of these things from Peter Sage, the mentor I work with, and the person I'm proud to call a good friend. He taught me a lot of these things, and it has changed my life dramatically. I am analytical by nature, and I figured like everything is tangible, everything can be touched, everything can be reasoned, everything can be analytically described. But that's not really the case, and it turns out that once I started to accept that the universe is just one big ball of energy, and how I show up and how I act in the world is actually influencing what's happening to me, and gets me from a level of by me, whereby I reason and do everything, okay, I need to do these 20 steps to get to where I want, to set my intentions and attract in my life what I want. Life became so much easier, and I started to attract money and business into my life. Peter showed up in my life in a different way. I'm now his business partner. We have a business that we run together. And I just became more sensitive to, let's say, the signals that were coming to me from the universe, because these things, everything happens for a reason. So things coming to me were no longer barriers or blockers, but they were like, okay, what have I got to learn here? What is there for me to understand, to see what's actually happening? So that's what's happening to me, and that's how I know that, staying in higher levels of frequency, a higher level of energy is really important. And the rule that outer world follows inner world is so, so true. It's hard for me even now. I'm going through a phase of a lot of transition, of a lot of change, and I have days whereby I don't feel very positive and very, high level of love and peace. And if I am down in those levels, the best thing I can really do to myself, instead of working hard in, let's say, by me fixing things, is to go back to through me and to go back to where I am in my life and really try to recalibrate the energy I'm radiating out, because it's so important. It's much more important than the things you do on a day-to-day basis. So I truly have seen in my life that outer world follows inner world, and therefore if I change my inner world, I can change my outer world. I can change the circumstances in my life and the way that I live. So if that's the case, right, if outer world follows inner world, how then do we lift ourselves out of these lower levels of frequency? Now, that is a really, really good question. The main thing to do is to find a way to broadcast a very clear signal to the universe. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So why is that? Because we want to send into the universe, like a radio broadcast station, a very strong signal of what we intend and what we want for our lives and what we want the universe to deliver to us. Now, can you do that in grief and apathy and shame in lower levels of consciousness? Very difficult, right? Because there you're dealing with yourself, right? You feel sorry for yourself, you blame things, right? So you can't be neutral and you can't radiate a strong signal to the universe. So you'll have to get yourself out of those lower levels of consciousness. And what we teach people usually is what I always call the secret weapon to doing this is what Hawkins calls the level of neutrality. So the first thing is to deal with all your negative circumstances and your negative things and bring yourself to a level of neutrality whereby you can look at these things and be neutral about it, not have negative feelings connotated to things anymore. And if you keep doing that, if you keep blaming and if you keep throwing negative energy to the circumstances of your life, then you don't get out of neutrality. So we have a lot of in-depth training material for that, how we teach people to do that. But you have to lift yourself out of your negative circumstances and your negative energies by getting to a level of neutrality, to be okay about feeling bad, or to be okay about grieving about somebody that passed away, for instance, or be okay about grieving about a lost relationship or a lost partner, or fearing what's going to happen in the world in the future. It's okay to feel it. It's okay to live it, but it's not okay to stay there, because you can't get to higher levels of consciousness if you keep in those lower levels of energy. So you'll have to deal with that. You have to get yourself out of that and approach these things with a level of neutrality. Now, once you're in neutrality, then usually through meditation, usually through calming the mind, calming the heart, you can then start creating your broadcast signal to the universe. And here, the key to this is that there's a lot of ways to envision what you would like, right? What you would like in the future. You can do vision boards. You can write it down, your vision for the future. You can make notes on what it is that you want. But what is really powerful to create a strong broadcast signal is to sit down in peace. And it can be with meditation music, it can be through guided meditation, and really think about what it is that you want to manifest in your life. And then not only to see it and to think it, but actually to feel as if it has already happened. And this is really the difficult part. And I personally am sometimes really struggling with this because, like I mentioned to you, my mind is analytical. I think through things in an analytical way. And to go to the feeling of where I want to go is sometimes difficult. And the feeling is not in your head, the feeling is in your heart. And the reason why this is so important is that what Peter calls when your head and your heart are aligned, that's when your energy of your broadcast signal triples or quadruples or maybe tenfolds, because your heart is the strongest broadcasting machine in your body together with your brain. So if you combine what it is that you want and you feel where you want to go, that's when you send out a very strong signal of actually what you want to get in life, what you want to achieve. So that is sort of the principles around this. Some of the things that can help you with this are really meditation. And to get out of your lower levels of consciousness, one of the ways to do that is to practice gratitude. So before you start broadcasting your signal, it's good to think about what are the things you're grateful for in your life right now. And I actually was reminded about this by someone today, is if I have sometimes feeling of anxiousness by I need to have so much to do. And this person basically said to me, well, are you practicing gratitude? Are you practicing and looking at what it is that you really want to be grateful for? And it can be little things. I'm alive, I'm healthy, I'm not sick, I'm sitting here with this amazing technology to speak to all of you in one go. It's amazing. So there's lots of things to be grateful for. My children are healthy, right? My family is healthy. So practicing gratitude can really bring you out of lower levels, can bring you to neutrality, and then once you're at neutrality, then you can start broadcasting the signal of what you want and attract what you want in your life by the principle that outer world follows inner world. So this is what I wanted to bring to you today. I know it's a very quick, only 20-minute, sort of wrap up or talk about a topic that has a lot of facets and a lot of detail and a lot of aspects. I hope it sort of triggers your curiosity. If there's anything that triggers your curiosity and you want to know more about, just comment below and let me know what it is that you would like to know more about, and we'll see if we can help you with that either in the chat or in contacting you and letting you know. So yeah, that's what I really wanted to share. So we spoke about how to get into high vibes. What are high vibes? We spoke a little bit about the Hawkins scale, David Hawkins scale of consciousness, and how that works. I spoke to you about how Peter Sage translates that and how his levels of consciousness, the to me, by me, through me, and as me work. We spoke a little bit about, how the principle of outer world follows inner world works, and we also gave you some tips on how to stay in high frequency or in higher levels of consciousness. Get out of your lower levels of consciousness, get to neutrality, use gratitude to get out of it, and then use a very strong signal combining your head and your heart by feeling actually what you want to achieve in your life into existence and radiate, broadcast that signal out to the universe. I'm wishing you an amazing, amazing day. I hope this was useful to you and helpful in any way. It's a topic that's, amazing once you get to it. And like I said, from a recovering left-brainer, from a pure analytical person, this thing has changed my life forever. And I now have the tools to get out of my lower levels of energy quickly because I know how to do it. Anyway, hope you have some practice with this. I hope you enjoy this. And I'd love to see you on another live soon. See you then.